You have your Bibles open up to Acts chapter 13.
So we'll get to Galatians?
Yeah, we will get there. We're headed in that direction. We're still laying the groundwork for Galatians. And actually this morning we will be in Galatians as far as the province of Galatia, but not into the book yet. In Acts 13, starting at verse 2, it says, "As they ministered to the Lord and fasted, the Holy Spirit said, 'Separate unto me Barnabas and Saul, because I have a work for them to do.' And when they had fasted and prayed, and laid their hands on them, they sent them away." This is the beginning of the first missionary journey. Barnabas, Paul, John, Mark. They're headed to modern-day Turkey. If you look at the first missionary journey recorded in the scriptures, and then you look at the country today, big difference. It was a pagan country then, but open to the gospel. It's a Muslim country today, and not open to the gospel. There was problems that Paul had when he went into Turkey. We'll be looking at those. But first up, when they get to Turkey, because they take the Mediterranean route, think about it. When you go on a journey, you hop in your car. How far does something have to be from where you live or where you are before you say, man, I'm going to drive instead of walk? I'm sorry?
30 minutes.
Whatever.
You walk 30 minutes? Okay, more power to you. Yeah.
I walk an hour every
For
morning.
a lot of
You don't
people,
walk the Kroger.
for a lot of people, if you're a half mile away, I'm going to drive. Yeah, we're not going to walk it.
I used to
My
live,
dad
I
was
lived 4/10 of a mile.
My dad lives a quarter mile and I used to drive to his house.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the culture we live in.
And it'd be 200 yards if you walked through the woods, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back then, they didn't have cars. Most people didn't have horses. Most people hoofed it on foot. The average day, they would walk 20 miles when they were on a journey. So if you're making a journey of 500 miles, you don't get there on the next page. And a lot of times we forget that. We're reading a verse, and they're in Perga. All of a sudden, they're in Antioch. Wow, 5 minutes later. No, that would have been probably a week's journey. Yeah, it took a little bit of time to get there.
They might
So
have hitched on a chariot or something.
Do I?
They might have hitched on a
They
chariot.
had a hitched on a chair. But still, that would take time.
Yeah.
That would take time. Yeah, and you see, that's a lot slower than what we move today. And so they'd be walking, and as they're walking on the journey, they're sharing Christ. To strangers, to people they meet on the way. How many of us share Christ to strangers? You're in the store, you're in a bookstore, you're waiting in line. Does Christ work his way into our conversation? You sure? And it's really simple. We were at Barnes & Noble yesterday and sat down at a table to look at some magazines. Saw a guy sitting across from me was reading a book. I had an idea what the book was. And I looked at him and said, "So what you reading?" He says, "Psalms." I says, "Oh, you're reading from the Bible?" "Yes." And we got to talking. He's a Christian from Ethiopia. He's been in this country for 2 years. And he's looking for a job, by the way. If anybody knows the job for him, he is looking for a job. But, yeah, he's here in this country now. And he's a brother in Christ from Ethiopia. And we were able to talk. I used to have a friend that was a missionary in Ethiopia. Yeah, and we were able to talk a little bit about when he was growing up under King Haile Selassie. How many of you remember Haile Selassie? Anybody remember Haile Selassie? Oh, y'all so young. Haile Selassie was king of Ethiopia for something like 60-something years, 70 years. He was the longest ruling monarch in the world. But he made claim to Christianity. And I know that some of his children were Christians. So, you know, you sit there, you get to meet people from different places. And that's what Paul would have run into. As he was walking, he would have met somebody from Galatia, he would have met somebody from Greece, he would have met somebody from Rome, he would have met people from different places. And he shared the gospel. But he had an idea of where he was going. Now, how many of you think he knew going to travel through several journeys, several cities, to get to Derby, and then backtrack. Do you think he had an itinerary? I mean, if we go somewhere today, most of us will make reservations ahead of time. I want to know when I'm going, what time I'm planning on getting there, how I'm going to get there, what route I'm going to do. Some people are more adventurous than others. Yeah.
We like going from every exit for, 45 miles and stopping to see if they have any rooms available. Whatever.
That can get old.
Well, there's some places though where it talks about the disciples, especially like in this Acts time, where they were places instantly. And they could have very well been there instantly,
Yeah, never limit time.
Not have travel because, and then like there was, that one place where he was like, whether I was in the body or out of the body, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird, but okay.
But it makes sense because God is not limited by time and space. And with Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, yeah, he was out in the desert and all of a sudden, by the Spirit, he's up here in the city now. I mean, Star Trek and the transporters had nothing on God. So you said that, God can do it. So we don't limit God. But on the average, it was a trip. It was a walking. And so they get to Perga. Perga is on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Anybody ever lived on the coast of anywhere? Swamps, marshes. What do you find a lot of when you have swamps and marshes? Mosquitoes. What do mosquitoes do? They suck your blood. What do they carry?
Malaria.
Malaria plus some other nasty stuff. There's a debate on what happened in Perga. And we're not going to look at Paul's missionary actions there. But at Perga, John Mark says, I'm out of here. Why? We don't know. It is possible, because we do know that Paul and Barnabas moved inland. Maybe there was a malaria outbreak. And he said, I don't want to get this. That stuff's nasty. I'm out of here. He left. But Paul and Barnabas says, we're going to inland. Does God direct us in our daily lives? And what can he use to direct us?
Everything.
Everything and anything.
Or anybody.
Or anybody. And too often we'll miss it. We'll think, oh, that's just circumstance. That's just an accident. God says, hey, I'm going to have something happen in Perga. I'm not ready for John Mark to be part of the ministry, but I need you two to go into the interior. Does he do that with us? Has he ever prompted you to do something different by something that wasn't real comfortable? Stirring up the nest and say, this isn't where you belong. I want you over there. I want you to do this instead. And by circumstances which are God ordained, he moves us. And so he moves Paul and Barnabas. And they start in. Now, a little bit later, we come back to Perga and the incident that happened there. Because Paul and Barnabas, as they start the second missionary journey, get into a fight. And they're fighting over John Mark. Barnabas says, hey, let's take John with us. And Paul says, that deserter? We don't want him. We don't care for his time. Notice that. We know Paul as an inclusive preacher. He preached to the Jews. He preached to the Gentiles. He says, I become all things to all men, so that by all means I might win some. He says, I'm going to talk to all kinds of people. I'm not going to say, we don't want your type here. But then when it comes to John Mark, he does exactly what he's saying, don't do. Do you ever notice that? And how do we do that? By our actions. By just avoiding some people. Well, I wouldn't say we really don't like them, but I'm not going to go out of my way to be friendly to them. to talk to them. I mean, they're different than we are. As far as I know, nobody in here has piercings all over their body. You go in, do I?
How do you know?
I said, as far as I know. As far as I know, there's none obvious. But you know, you're in a bookstore, and you see this person tattooed and pierced and spiked hair and wearing a good trench coat, and what do we do? I'm going to sit in another section of the store.
Give him a King James Bible.
Give me the King James, that's it, man. Yeah,
That'll save them.
definitely. Yeah, hit him over the head with it when you give it to him.
Knock him out and drag him out of there.
That's right, we're going to put him. But you know, do we not subtly discriminate? Say, well, we don't like that type. And we need to get away from that. And Paul and Barnabas have this big fight. And there again, Barnabas says, well, I'll take Mark and go this way. And Paul says, I'll take Silas and go this way. And it was to multiply the gospel. So even the things that we say are bad, God says, look what I'm going to do with this. Look how I'm going to change things. Now we get to, are we there already? Yes, we actually have made it to Poseidon.
I used to think that all those people were kind of just like us. But then one of my buddies pointed out something, and he said this, and I really think that there's something to it. And he said, like, you see a car with a bunch of bumper stickers on it. Oh, let's say like my truck. Never had bumper stickers till I came back from the war. I'm just saying. Okay, and he says, every bumper sticker is like an issue that you need to work through or whatever. And as they've been wearing off, I've been working through issues. I'm just saying. He said the same thing about, you know, people with tattoos and piercing and everything. They've got stuff they're working through, he thinks. And he says, that's just kind of an outward sign or whatever. He says, it's not that you have to treat them different. He says, but you need to know that when you go into that. And so since he said that, I've noticed, you know, this was years ago, but I really think there's something to that. When people are trying to say something on the outside without you even having to talk to them, they're trying to send, you know, a message, and it may not be a bad thing necessarily. Like I said, you know, there was the one guy that said, you know, these tattoos give me a reason to talk to people that you can't talk to. And I get that, you know, but he said, you know, but he also said he went through some stuff, you know.
If you see a bumper sticker that says coexist with a different religious symbol for each of the letters.
I want to get my big marker and keep the door of my truck right no on it. That's what I want to do.
I believe we should coexist. I like that one actually.
What do you think the issue might be? You mentioned working through things.
Yeah, I think that those people are trying to say, like they're trying to figure out where their salvation comes from, and they don't understand themselves. You know, like as far as in the realm of God. I like to coexist though, because I would love it if every Sunday people felt like walking in and hearing our message, no matter what they were from, what their background was, whether they were Muslim or Jewish or whatever, or Christian, you know, or thought they were Christian or Catholic, or, you know, and they would just feel like that it was okay to come in. I wish we could coexist so that we could tell our message, but unfortunately, they really don't mean coexist. They mean listen to me, but don't tell me your Christian message, is what I see on that.
They think that there's many roads that lead to heaven.
Yeah,
So everybody get that one.
Y'all coexist and all of you leave me alone.
Well, in my mind, the person driving the car, it may not even be their car, they may be borrowing the vehicle, but it means that they think that there's multiple paths, you know what I mean, and not only one.
Yeah.
That's what I think when I see that coexist.
What's the possibility, if you put a bumper sticker on that says coexist, that you're saying, somebody loved me.
Maybe.
I'm looking for somebody to accept me. And because I've been condemned from Christianity, I'm looking for something, let's all get along together. I just want to be accepted.
Well, see, that's what Paul did, though. He used, like, the symbols that they had there. He says, this is the unknown God. Let me tell you about the unknown God.
Yeah.
Coexist. Coexist with me. Let me tell you about Jesus. You see? Like, I could see you using that to talk to people.
I will defend the right of people to be Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, whatever they want to be. I will defend that right to the death. However, I also defend my right to say, hey, I disagree with you, let me tell you what I think. That you tell me my side. And I should have the same right that they have. So, you know, coexisting is good because we do coexist on this planet.
Yeah.
And if we refuse and say, I'm just going to be with all my Baptist friends, because they're the only ones really Christians, right? We miss what God's talking about.
We got to hang out with them KJV guys too.
Yeah.
I heard a preacher say one time, Dan, he said, you're either, you know, you're either going to be serving the enemy, you're either going to serve the devil, or you're serving the Lord. You know, that's the only two options.
Yeah, you're serving one or the other.
You know, and I agree with the coexist thing as far as, you know, loving them, loving the person. That goes back to the homosexuality thing we was talking about. Yes, we do have to coexist and love the homosexuals.
But coexist does not mean I agree that you get heaven.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. But, you know, they don't have to know that that's what you believe. You could talk to them a little while before you actually reveal that. And
they should be able to
you know,
tell something
you don't
about
have to be
lifestyle.
sneaky. I'm not saying be sneaky, but I'm like, you know, you can be somebody's friend. If they see that you're a friend, they're more willing to listen to what you say. And then, I know.
In my opinion, you earn the right to share the gospel. You show the love of Christ first. And when you've shown them the love of Christ, they're going to want to listen to you. But too many of us don't show the love of Christ. All we show is the judgment. And that turns people off. But when we get to Sidon, Paul starts off by going into the sanctuary. Bless you. And when you go into the sanctuary, into the synagogue, Paul always started there. Somebody read Romans 1:16. I love these electronic devices. Can't hear the pages turn to the electronic ones. Anyone?
I got it.
Okay.
For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jews first and also to the Greek.
So Paul went into the synagogue for what reason? Where does the gospel begin? With the Jews. And he said there's a proper order. I go and I present to the Jews, knowing there'll be a few who accept, but there'll be others who reject. And when they reject, I'll go to the Gentiles. How do we act? Do we get rejected by other Baptists and then say, I'm not going to share with anybody? Would Paul have done that? When he was rejected by his own, he says, great, that opens up more doors. Anybody know who John Wesley was?
Methodist.
Methodist, the founder of the Methodist Church. Although he really didn't intend to found a church, but it happened that way. Do you know why the Methodist Church got started? John had some problems with what was going on in the Anglican Church. But do you know why they left the Anglican Church? They were kicked out. John was told, if you're going to preach that kind of stuff, you're not going to preach in our pulpits. And so what did he do? He went out into the graveyard, stood up on a tombstone, and he says, this will be my pulpit. The world is my congregation. He didn't care that he'd been rejected by the Anglicans. He says, I got a message from God. And too often, we get rejected and give up and go home. Well, they just don't like me no more. I'm going to quit. When Paul went into the synagogue, he says, listen, I got a message for you. Now, it was common practice when a visiting rabbi, a visiting teacher, pretty much a visiting person would come to a synagogue. The cantor would do the first part of the service. He'd read from the Old Testament. He would sing the Psalms. And then he'd say, do you have a word? And so the visitor would get up and read from the scroll and give a little sermon. And so Paul gets up and he says, I want to talk to you, the Jews. I want to talk to the proselytes, the Gentiles who become Jewish. And I also want to talk to you who are God-fearers. You may know what a God-fearer was. A God-fearer was somebody who accepted the doctrine of Judaism, but had not formally joined by circumcision. And so they were Gentiles who says, hey, yeah, we believe in God.
We're drawing a line.
Do I?
We're drawing a line.
I'm not stepping over there. Yeah. And they were considered by the Jews as almost Jews. They headed in the right direction. Today we might call them seekers. They come to church. I believe in God, but they're not dedicated. They're not sold out. And they come and, well, you know, I think y'all taking it a little bit too far when you have church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. Actually have a friend who he will tell you flat out, if you go to church more than once a week, you're too religious. Sunday morning is all he thinks you need to do, and that takes care of it.
I think there's a lot of people in our church that are like that because they only come Sunday morning. Sunday it's the only time we ever see them usually.
And we need to reach out to those and bring them in. And sometimes they do that because they don't feel like they quite belong. I don't have the gift you have. I don't have the abilities you have. I don't have the fervor you have. I don't have the whatever it is. I don't really fit. And Paul went out his way to take those who didn't really fit and say, hey, God loves you. You fit in God's kingdom. And we need to be able to do that, to reach out to those who, well, we do not belong. Like Linda was saying, we have a lot of new couples in church and a lot of young people coming in, and we invite them to class. Have we sat with them? Have we said, hey, let's get together. Let's, you know, do we accept them? Are we so busy sitting in our little place? And I know when I preach on Wednesday night and I ask everybody to come to the middle, I know that's dangerous, but there's a reason for that. We got to quit being so set in our way that we don't know who's on the other side of the church. We've not met the people there. And we need to say, hey, let's get together.
I think it's easy too to come Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday and still be in that same boat and just do it because you're doing it.
Because it's the thing to do.
I checked my 3 boxes.
That's fine.
You know, why are we doing it? Are we doing it to truly, you know, we're supposed to be equipped here to go out.
See, and Danielle, you hit it on the head. Not only those that I was talking about, but those who are here all the time seem like they fit in okay. Do they really? I've told many times, I'm so thankful for this church and the way people have treated us. I've been in church my whole life. Until we got here, Sheila and I have been married 35 years, and that 35 years, we've been invited to go out to eat with people less than 5 times. And since we've been here, people invite us. They include us, you know. It's so refreshing that, hey, maybe I do belong here. Because there's been a lot of churches that we've been at, that we've served, we really don't feel like we belong. That's what God has us for the season. And so, you know, we need to reach out to those. We need to say, yeah, why don't you come out and eat with us on Sunday night? Why don't you come out and go into my house for lunch Sunday, or whatever. We need to reach out to people and say, I want you to belong. And Paul included the God-fearers and said, I got great news for you. So we'll pick up next week a little bit more on the journey. And when we get finished with the missionary journey, we actually get into the book. But we're headed that way, folks. We will get there. Any questions?